3. The moral foundations of money. Throughout history, every era which has witnessed a crisis due to man's moral and religious failure has seen also the coincidence of certain phenomena. James Laver has cited some of these. Post-crisis epochs always have certain things in common: dance mania, an inflated currency, a wave of female emancipation, and general promiscuity. All these we find in marked degree in the period following the French Revolution and in the period following the First World War, and they are reflected with an astonishing faithfulness in the clothes women wore. This list, however, omits one of the most important aspects of every such era: gambling. Gambling comes to have a religious prominence and passion in the minds of men, so that it is more than a mere pastime. It is a hope for life. A 1964 documentary film narrated by Terry Thomas, "Everybody's Got a System," brought out clearly this religious presupposition in gambling. The gambler denies implicitly that the universe is under law. He insists that all life is a gamble, and a falling brick can kill you, and totally meaningless events always surround you, because chance, not God, is ultimate. Since chance, not God, rules the universe, causality does not prevail. It is therefore possible to get something for nothing, and the gambler, knowing what the odds are, nevertheless expects chance to overrule law and enrich him. People who believe in chance rather than God and law will inevitably call for and establish a civil government and a monetary policy to conform to their faith. The result is the gambler state, a civil government which operates on the premise that it can create something out of nothing, and by using fraudulent money, get something for nothing. God's creative activity is premised on his own being, which is law. The gambler state's creative activity is premised on ultimate chance and a denial of economic law. The history, therefore, of every gambler state is one of eventual disaster after a period of seeming success. Every interventionist state, whatever it's called, whether the welfare state, the Great Society, or any other name, exists by manipulating money and by a progressive substitution of fraudulent money in the form of a paper currency and baser metals for gold and silver. The outcome is socialism and disaster. The purposes are ostensibly well-intentioned. The state manipulates money for one or other of certain purposes. 1. More equitable distribution of purchasing power. 2. Relief of debtors. 3. Stimulation of trade. Before analysing this manipulation of money, it is important that money be defined. 2 common definitions are: first, that money is a medium of exchange, and second, that it is a representation of wealth. Both are dangerously inaccurate. An excellent definition from 1833 is that of William Gouge, an able associate of President Andrew Jackson. Money is not, as was asserted by a late Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. I, merely the representation of property. Money of gold and silver is property, is wealth. $100 in silver can no more be considered as the representative of $100 worth of flour than $100 worth of flour can be considered as a representative of $100 worth of iron. Each is the equivalent of the other, but each is real wealth, not a mere symbol or representative. The point is extremely important. True money is real wealth, and only because it is real wealth does true money successfully function as a medium of exchange. Gold and silver money is real wealth, which is readily transferable, enduring, relatively stable in value, easily divisible and easily transportable. No sensible person wants to exchange real wealth, a landed estate, goods or valued services for something worthless, something which is not wealth but is passed off as a representation of wealth or a medium of exchange. Such counterfeit money drives good money out of circulation, since people refuse to exchange good money for bad money, and it forces upward the prices of land, goods, labour, and all other commodities because people are increasingly unwilling to exchange them for fraudulent money, and because that inflated paper currency has progressively less value. But the gambler state still hopes to hit the jackpot and bring in a bonanza, usher in paradise on earth for its people, stimulate trade, increase purchasing power, and relieve debtors. It is begun by manipulating money, that is, by progressively destroying true money and replacing it with legalized counterfeit money. The basic methods used in this program of making money, or inflation, are three. 1. Debasement or devaluation of the basic metallic unit of money. 2. The issuance of paper or token money in amounts materially in excess of the resources of the government in metallic reserves and assured tax revenues. 3. The creation of new bank credits on the basis of an increasing public debt. As a result of these policies, the paper currency becomes progressively worth less and less, and the public and private debt increases. Because the state has cheapened money and borrows heavily to finance deficit spending, promising to pay with what will be worthless money, the people are encouraged to go into debts also, expecting to pay off good debts with bad money. Basic to inflation, therefore, is larceny. The states and the citizenry want something for nothing, and they hope to pyramid larceny into a better life for everyone. This larcenous hope rests on a denial of economic law and a trust in chance. St. Paul described this mentality as sinning to make grace abound, Romans 6:1. Tilden described ably, in 1936, the two great facts which make inflation and monetary manipulation possible. 1. The vital prerequisite of an effective inflation, which will result disastrously to the creditor position, is the intent to falsify the true economic position of a nation or to relieve the debtor at the expense of the creditor. Where there is no such intent, there may be a temporary inflation, not harmful, possibly beneficial, and it will contract itself when its work is done. 2. Inflation, whether of bank credits or of paper currency, cannot be effective until the larcenous purpose is generally comprehended. When the larcenous mentality prevails, debts become sound business, and credit, which means normally the ability to be trusted, reliability, integrity, comes to mean instead the ability to contract debt. Moral values are thus turned upside down, and the larcenous debtor, whether a nation or an individual, becomes the quote-unquote person of credit. Debt or credit is an important means of inflation, and, like all inflation, it destroys those who, in terms of old-fashioned virtues, save money. A quote-unquote credit economy makes thrift foolishness, and it progressively destroys the middle and lower classes. The gambler state gains the support of the lower classes by offering them some form of quote-unquote welfare subsidies, some share the wealth program. But ultimately these lower classes are themselves the victims also, together with the middle classes, as the cost of socialism steadily lowers the standard of living. Interventionism, socialism, makes the rich richer, the poor poorer. Since its essence is larceny, the thieves with the greatest power are able to rob not only all the victims, but all the other thieves as well. The petty thief who imagines that he can gain by the alliance of big government, big business and big labour is destined to suffer. Fresh victims are continually needed, and the little man is one of the first victims. Power always allies itself with power, not with weakness. And when a power allies itself briefly with some weaker power, it is not with any altruistic purpose, but simply to increase its own power. This is true in the political realm. Poland in the 1930s foolishly believed that an alliance with Britain would enrich her at the war's end, only to be sold out by Britain and the United States to a more powerful ally, the USSR. This is true in the economic realm also. When the state allies itself with the worker, its purpose is to increase the powers of the state, not the powers of the worker. The worker finds eventually that his labour leaders, the big industrialists, and the politicians are in closer collaboration with each other than with him. Ultimately, the cannibalistic nature of socialism leads to the destruction of labour leaders and industrialists, and then of the politicians as sacrificial victims, and to the death of the state itself. There are those who, concerned about the debt money involved in Federal Reserve notes, believe that the quote-unquote conservative answer is debt-free money printed by the Treasury Department. Various groups are ardent advocates of this hope and advance it in the name of quote-unquote humanity. Thus, the Greenback Party, in advocating government-controlled and issued printing press money, has declared, "We demand the abolition of special privilege." Its programme, like that of every party today which holds to paper currency in any such form, involves special privileges for the state. Private individuals are barred by law from debt-free money. They cannot print and circulate paper dollars and thereby enrich themselves. But the federal government, under such a plan, would have precisely that privilege. It could avoid borrowing money and incurring debt by the simple expedient of printing money. It can use its coercive power to compel people to accept this money and thus can exchange its counterfeit money for the real wealth of the people. The results in every such attempt is rapid anarchy and collapse. Advocates of fiat paper money are socialists, whether they know it or not. A departure to any degree from gold and silver is a step in the same direction. Every departure from real money, from gold and silver, is a step into the planned society. Money manipulation, whether debasing the metal coinage, issuing some unbacked paper currency, or extending public and private quote-unquote credits or debt, is a form of planning. It is planning for larceny and for the avoidance of economic law or consequences. It is planning in the name of sound economic goals, such as the adjustment of supply and demand, the creation of incentives to produce and produce usefully, and the production of honest standards for goods. Planning, in other words, claims for its purposes exactly the same goals as the free market does, as specifically the price mechanism does. However, as Jacques Rueff has noted with reference to Germany, and yet the price mechanism achieved in a few hours what planning, although reinforced with unprecedented powers, had failed to achieve in several years. The free market is more productive than the planned market. The great age of industrial growth and expansion in the United States has been assumed to be the post-Civil War era, but that era saw interventionism and money manipulation introduced, and industrialism was instead retarded, although textbooks give a contrary impression. The free market functions in terms of planning, but the planning is by millions of producers whose desire is to produce a commodity of the highest standard to command the best price. Failure to do so will eventually put them out of the market, which means an individual failure rather than a social collapse. Private planning is realistic. The more complex a society, the more it requires specialization and therefore decentralization. Central planning calls for centralization, which is a return to economic primitivism and, in a complex industrial society, an assurance of progressive confusion and ultimate collapse. Central planning seeks to avoid the personal failures but ensures the social collapse. And its means of seeking to avoid the personal failures is twofold. First, it declares that personal planning is no longer necessary. The states will assure the citizens of social security in every form. Second, central planning seeks to ensure security by continual larceny. It offers impossible promises and it delivers for a limited number of years by stealing from one class of citizen to deliver to another. The Social Security program is itself a fitting symbol and administration for the gambler state. It violates all sound economics, and its basic structure is similar, if not identical, to the chain letter scheme. Those who are the earliest members of the scheme can profit by it. For the rest, it is a total loss as the inexorable reality of economic law overtakes the chain letter Social Security scheme. The larceny of central planning schemes is closely linked to its anti-Christian scheme of morality. St. Paul declared, "If any would not work, neither should he eat." 2 Thessalonians 3:10. The welfare state planners are so full of love. They want the whole world to eat. They substitute coercive political action for charity to do this, and they substitute welfare politics for economics. Thus, economic law is denied. The welfare state is a gambler state. It does not believe in economic law. As a result, it defies economics in order to produce welfare, in order to ensure plenty for all. Instead, it creates scarcity by its destruction of true economic planning, private planning for the free market. The result is hunger. The four basic causes of famine in human history must be noted. 1. The prevention of cultivation or the willful destruction of crops. 2. Defective agriculture caused by communistic control of land. 3. Governmental interference by regulation or taxation. 4. Currency restrictions, including debasing the coin. As Montesquieu observed long ago, countries are not cultivated in proportion to their fertility, but to their liberty. Famine is thus the outcome of money manipulation and status controls, whether exercised frankly in the name of larceny or done in the name of human welfare. As Tilden noted, primarily, public debt is a device intended to beguile the taxpayer into thinking he is getting something for nothing. As he noted, it would be more honest to call the Secretary of the Treasury instead the Secretary for Debt. It might be even more honest to call him the Secretary for Larceny, because deficit spending can be financed only by legalized larceny, in one form or another, as stealing from the industrious and thrifty members of the population. For a nation lacking saving individuals would have no surplus. Without a surplus, there would be no creditors. Without creditors, there would be nobody for governments and private debtors to plunder. In order for anyone to be prodigal, someone must be thrifty. Thus, this gambler state, a larcenous state, is parasitic. Every socialist state is a parasite. After destroying its own wealth, it must feed on another nation's wealth, and thus socialism is by nature driven to imperialism. It offers paradise on earth to other countries by means of socialism and seizes them to enable itself to survive. When the host body dies, the parasite dies. Today, the United States is the host body for the parasitic socialism of the world, and the United States, because of its interventionism, is rapidly becoming a fearful parasite, draining the wealth of the American people. When, however, achieved, the host body is captured and destroyed, It will destroy the parasite also. The results will be a worldwide economic collapse of unrivaled dimensions and hardships. Out of this wreckage, a free order will emerge. Meanwhile, the politicians of the gambler state march forward proudly in all their ignorance. When House Majority Leader Carl Albert was asked in January 1966, "Mr. Albert, do you see any signs of inflation today?" he answered, "Well, I hope not. I think our real dollars have remained pretty stable." I think one of the concerns that the president had in the aluminum and copper matters was that this might point to inflationary trends if the companies went through with what they had suggested they might do. I'm not an economist. I really don't want to give a definitive answer on the subject. President Lyndon B. Johnson, after taking every kind of inflationary step as president, refused to allow the aluminum and copper industries to recognize the fact of inflation by a price adjustment. His action was a state control of industry. Monetary manipulation is eventually the substitution of state control for self-government, and it can lead only to ever-increasing controls. The more the state controls the people, the freer it is from any control over itself. The states and the increasingly controlled banks in the state are in the business of making money in order to solve all the problems of the world, personal, social, and political. New wealth will be made out of nothing by the trick of manipulating money and creating new capital. So long, therefore, as there are persons wanting capital, we may expect there will not be wanting applicants for the power to create capital. The evil will be cured by itself as a natural disease is ended by terminating in death. There will be no real resistance from aluminum and copper or from the bulk of the citizenry. Each may dislike a particular control whereby its own ox is gored, but all are alike engaged in furthering an economy based on larceny and alike hope to get rich thereby. They share in a common dedication to immorality, and they shall share in a common death. The certainty of the present order is its death. The wise will prepare for liberty.